Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Silverman, one of the co-founders of Commerce Next. We are a community event series and conference for marketers at retail and DTC brands. Welcome to our regular webinar series. Today's topic is Shopify for Enterprise, question mark. One of the big e-commerce decisions made by retailers and brands is their e-commerce platform, of course. And we're excited to go deep into that topic. And specifically, we're going to hear how Steve Madden really leaned into Shopify for a broad rebuild of its business that includes 30 sites across 4 brands and 21 countries. As always, we like these webinars to be interactive. We'll be taking your questions. Feel free to load those up during the presentations or during Q&A. Thank you all for tuning in and making time to join live or listening to the replay. I want to start with a few important thank yous. First, I want to thank Run DTC and Content Stack for being our sponsors today. It's been a pleasure to partner with them on this topic, and we depend on our sponsors to make these webinars possible and deliver this important information to all of you out there listening. Next, I want to thank our speakers. We really appreciate them making time during a busy time of the year. It's always busy, but there's a lot going on. John Grigson, who's VP of International at Steve Madden, with his colleague Colleen Waters, VP of E-commerce at Steve Madden. Paul Zengel, who's the CEO of Run DTC. Ben Noonan, who's founder and chief solutions officer at Run DTC. And Jeff Cheel, who's director of partnerships of the Americas for Content Stack. And I want to thank our team, Alan, Tracy, Corey, Robert, Veronica, Jenny, who are working behind the scenes to make this webinar run smoothly. And again, I want to thank you all and our audience for joining us today. So I want to talk about a couple things that are coming up. First, June 4th, our webinar is called Tariff Turbulence. Just like this important question of Shopify for Enterprise, this is another super hot topic in retail and e-commerce. We're excited to have Sucharita Kadali from Forrester Research share her insights about this, and we're going to outline the impact of tariffs and what retailers and DTC brands can do now to mitigate that impact. And Sucharita is going to be joined by Matt Kruger, who's SVP Digital Commerce at Buffalo Games. There's a link in the chat for you to register for that webinar that's coming up on Wednesday, June 4th. So today's agenda, we are starting with the overall presentation, Shopify for Enterprise, and what Steve Madden did. We'll do some audience polls, and then we'll have a panel discussion with Steve Madden, Run DTC, and Content Stack. A couple important announcements and instructions I want to share before I hand things over to Paul. Mark your calendars, of course, for the Commerce Next Growth Show. It's June 24 to 26 in New York City. It's the must-attend event of the summer for retail. You'll gain insights from industry leaders. There'll be the latest innovations. You will have tons of networking opportunities there. And we still have some spaces in our travel program where you can get up to $1,200 in travel credit in exchange for participating in our meetings program. It's a great way to make the trip more affordable and add more meaningful connections. So that deadline to apply is coming up in a couple of days on May 23rd, which is in just a couple of days. What you'll find, we have over 150 speakers. There's 60 sessions. Some of them, like you can see here, Kelly Mahoney, CMO of Ulta, Joe Kolda, founder and CEO of Viore, Fiona Tan, CTO of Wayfair, the CMO at American Eagle. I won't say all of them, but we have a great lineup of speakers, and we're really excited about it. So if you missed any of these past sessions or really want to go deep into any topic, I encourage you to go for the first time or go back again to our YouTube channel. There's over 500 videos available on just about every topic you can think of. If you go to youtube.com/commercenext, you can see the entire video archive. So don't worry about missing anything today. We're recording the webinar. It'll be available either later today or tomorrow. as the replay. And I want to show you a couple of things on your screen so you can make the most out of the webinar. So on your upper right, that's the main panel for interactivity. And that's where you can see things like the chat, which is on the far left of that panel. That's where you can engage with other attendees, make a comment about something that you heard. Next, going to the right is the Q&A. And if you have questions you want to ask, please use the Q&A. And we love getting questions from the audience. As I mentioned earlier, we want it to be interactive. And one of the things you can do is if you see other people asking questions, you can upvote. So that'll help prioritize the questions that our audience most wants to hear. And then later in the webinar, we'll do some polls. We're going to hear what your opinions are on a few different questions. And if you're listening to the replay, you can see the results in the final in the polls tab. And then finally, we have a handout, which is the presentation that we're going to go through in a little bit. You can download those slides and hear all of that in the handout section. And then if you're watching the replay, all of the handouts are at the bottom of your webinar player. All right, so with that, I'm really excited to introduce someone I've known a long time in the industry, Paul Zangel. He's the CEO of Run DTC, which is a systems integrator, and he is a veteran digital retail leader. He's been in leadership roles at companies like Stan Stocks, Lululemon, Ralph Lauren, a number of others. He's really seen it all in the industry. So please welcome Paul to the Commerce Next webinar stage.
Thank you, Scott. And I have known Scott for more than 2 decades, and I consider him a great friend. And Scott, thanks for letting us be a part of this today. Okay, super excited to be here. Scott introduced me, so I won't do that. I am blown away by the turnout. We've got more than 300 people in the virtual room here. It shows what a hot topic this is. Looking at the list of brands and retailers, I know there's a lot of you who are at the decision point on this specific question right now. So looking forward to giving you a bunch of information. Can't wait for the questions afterwards. We're going to speed through 20 slides or so, just kind of before we get to the questions and the panel discussion. We'll start with introducing us as an agency and content stack as well. And then I'm going to get into some slides on the platform landscape and Shopify, and we'll dig into, what's changed and why. And then we'll get into Steve Madden's specific solution. We'll talk about the challenge that was there and how we addressed it with them in Content Stack, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we'll start with a little bit more about us. We are Run DTC. We are operators at heart. So Ben and I both sat in your seats for much of our career, running e-commerce and retail businesses. And that's a little bit about what makes us different, is that we've sat in your seat. We've run large enterprise e-commerce and retail businesses in North America and globally. Here's a sampling of some of the businesses we've run. And we understand the challenges that you all are going through as you try to grow these businesses. We're about 70 people strong now. We're global. We've got folks, I think, in 6 different states: Canada, Mexico, the UK, and then we have a subsidiary and an office in Pune, India, where we have our own employees out there that do a lot of our development, engineering, QA, and functions like that. And we have a ton of experience. So the agency's been around about 5 years, but most of us have been in e-commerce for decades, and we've seen it all. Here's a sampling of the brands that we support. And it's worth mentioning here that we actually do work on multiple platforms. We work on Shopify, we do BigCommerce work, we do Salesforce work. And so I think we're kind of uniquely positioned to talk about this challenge because we've seen and been on many of these platforms. We also do more than just platform work. We work on digital transformation up and down the e-commerce stack, including iPaaS, OMS, PIMS, DAMs, almost every MarTech tool, customer service, and everything that goes on within your businesses. And with that, I will hand it over to Jeff to jump in and give a quick overview on Content Stack.
Hi guys, I'm Jeff Cheel. I'm the Director of Partnerships for Content Stack. We are a proud partner of Run TTC, bringing the solution here today. We really appreciate the opportunity to come join. Paul, if you want to go to the next, just a little bit of an overview on Content Stack as a whole. We're a founding headless composable CMS. We help enterprise brands deploy and optimize solutions to the world. And about 400 customers, 500 employees, 100% cloud native as a SaaS solution. Our focus is on taking complex organizations who want to adopt either headless or even composable architectures and bring them to market faster, quicker, cheaper, and smarter. And we really focus then on the largest, biggest problems out there in the business, helping multi-language sites, multi-brands, which is why we were an ideal fit for Steve Madden and really appreciate the opportunity to help them with this transformation. Paul, if you want to go to the next slide. As a transformation of our company, we started back in 2012. Again, we started as a composable solution. You can see we were first one of the original headless CMSs out there in the market. We continued to expand our vision as we've added more functionality over time, things like personalization, visual building, brand aware API or AI, and really become a DXP, as many organizations are looking for a DXP solution, not just a simple CMS, really trying to crack open. And we've been validated with our placement with Gartner and Forrester. We're currently a Gartner visionary and a Forrester leader in this space compared to some of those big brands that you see there on the left, some of those monolithic solutions that aren't necessarily applicable anymore for these big brands that are looking for complex integrations, especially with platforms like Shopify, and bringing their organization and tech stack into the next generation of composable, flexible technologies that can work together across multiple parts of the organization. Don't lock them into a lot of these traditional types of issues that cause inefficiencies and cost issues. One last slide, Paul, just speaking a little bit more to our ecosystem. We are on all three clouds. That's important to you guys as investors in technology and where you want to host your technology, where you want to run your transactions through marketplace. So we're one of the only CMSs to be in all three clouds. And as a composable CMS, we are a connector of technologies, not only Shopify, but many of the different tech pieces that are going to be in your stack, anything from your data warehouse to your customer data and your CDP, your hosting, and so on. So we manage and try to help host a lot of that technology integration for you to lower your cost of ownership and your cost of going to market. Paul, I think that's it. Maybe one last slide for me. Yeah, that's it. And guys, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll hand it back and we'll start to get into the solution in hand.
Yeah, great. And for those of you who haven't done a Commerce Next webinar before, Jeff's available for questions. All of us are afterwards. So you guys can fire him up and get him back on screen. Okay, now let's dig into the question at hand, Shopify for Enterprise. I'm going to start by giving you just a little overview of platform market share right now. And then we'll dig into some of the elements that we think makes Shopify the choice right now for enterprise. And then we'll show some of the brands that have migrated over. Let's start with the platform landscape as it stands. So this is a chart that shows market share by GMV over the last 4 years of some of the more well-known platforms. I didn't include, some of the ones that aren't enterprise ready, like a WooCommerce or some of the smaller ones. But the ones that the ones that a lot of you are on now are on here. And what this represents is a mass migration right now. Like Shopify is winning. The platform has really evolved to the point where it's ready for large business. And that's what we're seeing. It's always been, it was built for small businesses, right? Built for entrepreneurs. They still speak to entrepreneurs. There's more than 5 million sites on the platform, almost 6 million now, which is crazy. But what's changed recently is the mid-market to large enterprise migration. And obviously, those of you who watch the space know that that's been a push for Shopify, both in the work that they've done on the platform, the product development, but also in their marketing and sales outreach. And so that's really what's changed. And it's just amazing to watch. I should say also, like as an operator, I've been on 8 different e-commerce platforms, sat in your seats on 8 different e-commerce platforms. So I've watched this happen like over and over and watched the next one come up and the next one come up. But this one's a little bit unique, this migration and this evolution. And I'll talk about why on the next slide. So why Shopify? And honestly, this list could be gigantic, but what we wanted to do was call out kind of the big things that really set this platform apart right now at this point in time. Number one is agility. This platform was built for small business owners, and so they made it really easy to use. It's so easy. I remember one time when I was an operator, I was building a site for a friend on Shopify. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. And at the same time, I was at a big brand, and I was launching Apple Pay in both cases. On another platform, it cost me like $150,000 in 6 weeks to launch Apple Pay. And on Shopify, I click a button and Apple Pay is live. It's those kinds of things that they've just made super, super easy in the admin and beyond. It's remarkable. Number two is relentless innovation. So we're giving this webinar on the day of Shopify, that Shopify Editions was released. So Shopify Editions, if you're not familiar with it, is a twice yearly release of new features. And it came out this morning. Usually it has 100 to 150 new features in the platform. Today was no difference. It was called Horizons, and it had a ton of cool features, 150 new features this time, and a lot of them that speak to enterprise. The ability to expansion in the use of business entities, which was really kind of holding back some of the global expansion for many of you and many brands on the platform. They've increased the market's capabilities and introduced new markets, and the concept of sub-markets, which they didn't have before. A ton of B2B enhancements. They've really made a big push on B2B. A bunch of new themes, theme block enhancements, and AI block generation, just to name a few. But the message here isn't about those new features. It is just the constant innovation and dedication to improving the product, which is where some of the platforms in the past have really fallen by the wayside. They just didn't spend enough, innovate enough, put enough effort into keeping the product up to date and growing it and making it easier to use, but also increasing capabilities. And Shopify is just doing a great job of that. Number three is ShopPay. I mean, a lot of people call ShopPay the killer app within Shopify. It is an amazing checkout. Converts higher than any other checkout that we've seen. It is super easy to build and manage, tons of payment options, and it's become ubiquitous to the consumer with the link to the Shop app. The fourth one is the ecosystem of apps and integrations to other software tools. It's I've never seen anything like it. In the past there was platforms that had pre-built integrations to some degree, but everyone is building for Shopify right now. The App Store alone has more than 10,000 apps, and then there's a lot of enterprise pre-built integrations that are available if you move to the platform. I called out reporting. It seems kind of minor, but it's the best that I've seen in the platform. It is native, it's real time, it's pretty amazing and easy to use. And then maybe the biggest reason, especially as tariffs are hitting us, and it's been tough the last couple of years since the pandemic on cost of goods and margins. We're all looking for savings that we can flow to the bottom line, and this is one for sure. We see, actually, this is a Shopify number. Shopify, on average, sees a 36% less total cost of ownership, and we can validate that. We get pulled into TCO analysis all the time because it's a great way to help a company kind of make this decision. Should we move over? And it's licensing fees for sure, but there's so many other elements. The build costs are way cheaper. The cost to maintain, developers, team, outside support is way less. And so this TCO number includes all of that. And it really is, savings. And what we see brands do a lot of times is take that savings and put it into marketing and drive growth. Technology used to be a differentiator for companies, and I would say that it is becoming less and less. Anyways, those are 6 reasons. There's a ton more to talk about with the platform, but we have limited time on the webinar, so I'm rolling on. It was the SMB entrepreneur platform, and now it's becoming the enterprise platform. This is from a Shopify deck. These are some of the logos that they have now, but the list is way longer than this of large businesses that have moved over. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ben to talk specifically about this solution with the Steve Madden brands. Ben, all yours.
Beautiful. You can move to the next slide. Steve Madden, well-known multi-billion-dollar footwear enterprise spread across multiple global regions. They've been on the platform for over 7 years, have grown to a collection of more than 30 sites across 5 brands. Historically, they've relied on regional teams and partners to maintain the various Shopify instances, in accordance with the regional consumer and market demands. And over time, this has just led to fractured global brand experiences, poorly performing Shopify sites, and really like an unhealthy reliance upon apps. A lot of the sort of traditional challenges with Shopify. Can move to the next slide. Solution was, really rooted in a way for Steve Madden to ensure that the regional brand experiences were homogenous and that the applicable teams had a better solution for rapidly evolving each of their unique sites, within the boundaries of the global brand guidelines. Centralizing the management of the Shopify storefront experience was critical. And after a bit of evaluation of DXP's content stack was chosen for a variety of reasons. 2 of the biggies being ease of use, comprehensive workflow, and live preview, a pretty critical feature. So we crafted one-of-a-kind integration, which enables the regional teams to add, remove, update pre-built modules on a per locale and per site basis, which gives them the ability to implement, a proper workflow to ensure that content is reviewed and approved prior to release. They can schedule the release of content as well, and ultimately preview the updates before they're pushed live, among many other things. It's important to note too that this integration was built to work with the current liquid-based Shopify approach, as opposed to being headless. It's a really critical differentiator. And this will soon be featured in a small collection of Shopify's partner solution accelerators, which is pretty rad. This was, although fairly tactical, these are very important kind of foundational steps, but they were the first in a more substantial effort by Steve Madden to centralize the management of a global roadmap, inclusive of feature additions and storefront updates, which is a pretty broad exercise, understanding that each of the regional teams have their own unique needs. They are listening for updates. They are looking for a short time to market, and always petitioning for the types of tools that suit them best. But obviously the enterprise is looking for a solution that satisfies a more global collection of businesses. The result of all of this work was a dramatic increase in operational efficiency for each of the regional teams. And then the Shopify specific updates were pretty substantial across the sites, across brands. There was a 16% improvement in conversion and a 21% increase in load time, or reduction in load time. Sorry.
Some of the things that make Shopify great is the ease of use, but then it can also create challenges because you have all of these teams working in multiple sites, adding apps and customizing things. And so it's easy to get off of an efficient, happy path on this platform. And so this solution really helped solve that. And all the teams did a great job. Anyways, that is the end. Scott, I'll hand it back over to you to take on questions and polls.
Well, if you could just stay there for a second. We got a couple questions in with some, I think, challenges to Shopify for enterprise, mostly around it being restrictive or too many guardrails or inability to customize. And I thought before we move on, you might want to address that. Or I don't know if we want to wait until we have Colleen and John on, or maybe we can do it both times.
Yeah, perfect. I could definitely take a stab. I know, Matt, you had a question just about, Shopify being somewhat opinionated and just sort of the restrictive nature of it all. I think what we're seeing with, the releases and the rapid evolution of Shopify is an increase in flexibility. The platform understands that, complex businesses demand, at the very least, the ability to craft experiences in the ways that they need to and want to. One of the things that's important to keep in mind as you consider Shopify is that, the complexity of your current business, the ways in which you use your commerce platform, or the variety of platforms in the stack don't necessarily go away. They may evolve a bit by way of new or modified business process, but you're oftentimes looking for more creative solutions for these, maybe systemic challenges. And so we'll oftentimes see, our clients really evaluating like how they're handling customer service. Which platforms are they utilizing? Could they make better use of Shopify? How are they handling storefront updates and content updates? Should they be looking at a DXP or some other type of a solution to provide better tooling? And then, up and downstream integrations are rarely the type of issue that cause delays or any sort of substantial friction in implementation. As long as you have, it ultimately becomes critical in these efforts. You have a good partner that can help you understand sort of the breadth of opportunities across your stack. Because I think, as we all know, having gone through, I'm sure that all of you have been through at least one platform implementation or re-implementation. It's rarely just about the one platform and the one effort right in front of you. There's always sort of a ripple effect, and you have to consider what those business process changes might be upstream and downstream, and really look for opportunities to leverage the platform in the ways that it's best suited. And we rarely run into scenarios anymore where Shopify is too restrictive to do the things that we need to do for customers.
All right, thank you for that. I'm sure we'll circle back to that, but I want to move in. We have a couple polling questions we want to do to get a little bit of a sense of what our audience is thinking, and then we'll have Colleen and John join for kind of a broader conversation with those folks. So why don't we kind of move into the polling questions. If we could bring up the first question. And that is a pretty simple one, which is, what e-commerce platform are you currently using? Adobe Commerce, BigCommerce, Commerce Tools, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, SAP Commerce Cloud, Scale, Shopify Plus, VTEX, or other? Okay, so the number one right now is Shopify, 27%. Number two, just behind it, is 26% for Salesforce Commerce Cloud, and 28% is other, and everyone else is in single digits. We're seeing a pretty big split here between Shopify and Salesforce. All right, so why don't we go to the next question, which is, do you agree or disagree that headless is a must-have for enterprise commerce? So very simply, strongly agree, somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. All right, so we're seeing about 20% strongly agree. The biggest group right now at 42% is somewhat agree, 32% somewhat disagree, and 10% strongly disagree. So a lot more split than I would imagine. So sounds like something for us to talk about and maybe help folks that are thinking one way or the other to kind of hear a different point of view there. Then last, as I mentioned, we have our next webinar coming up on June 4th on tariffs, and that's with Sucharita, and it's going to be moderated by our own Tracy Hermans. So we wanted to hear a little bit about how you're all thinking about tariffs at the moment. Obviously, aside from not liking them, but what are your top 3 concerns related to the recent tariff increases? Is it increased product costs? Is it delays or disruptions in fulfillment, pressure to raise prices without losing customers, uncertainty around how tariffs will affect Q4 planning, trouble syncing marketing, ops, and merchandising due to the uncertainty from tariffs, or something else? And you're welcome to put that in the chat. So about 29% is concerned about pressure to raise prices without losing customers. 30% is increased product costs, threatening profitability. And then the number 3 is uncertainty for Q4 planning. So no surprise, a lot of concerns that are there. All right, so with that, why don't we bring up Colleen and John, and as well as bring back Paul, Jeff, and Ben. Well, first, Colleen and John, thank you so much for joining our conversation. I thought, why don't we start by just having you each introduce yourself. On my screen, John, you are to the right of me, so I'll ask you first.
Sure. So I'm John Grigson. I'm the VP of our international business here at Steve Madden. So I work with our various business teams all over the world, as you saw on the slide earlier, in about 30 different countries now, and really just help them, operate their businesses and develop the Shopify platform to meet their needs.
And Colleen?
Awesome. Hi, I'm Colleen Waters. I oversee e-commerce here at Steve Madden. Really entails the end-to-end path to purchase of the customer experience, everything once they get to the site, and kind of opposite of John, focused on the US markets and our 5 brands there.
All right, so I guess first, Colleen and John, is there anything you wanted to add to what Ben had to say about the perceived restrictiveness of Shopify?
Yeah, when I joined Steve Madden in 2020, they moved to Shopify in 2018, so they were already on it, but I came not quite as high as Paul. I haven't been on like 8 different platforms, but I came from a non-Shopify user experience to Shopify, and I was blown away at the speed it gave me and the speed to market. So, coming from companies with huge internal development teams, systems customized within an inch of their lives, it took so long to get anything done. And you're prioritizing against, so many other departments and teams, which I didn't know any different at the time. But what I saw from Shopify and how much it really unblocked things, I was all in. Like, you can get a solution and get it live in a day if you want to within their app store, which I think is really incredible. And, you have some brands and companies who build solutions and some who buy, and maybe some are hybrids. And I came fully from build companies. But Shopify really changes that. So we can buy so much and get it stood up so easily, and then really focus efforts on building the things that are really going to change the game for us in our day-to-day. And I think, sometimes that requires customizations and things to work around roadblocks. But I think it gets you so far along in the process that where you have to pick it up to kind of layer in that customization, you're already so far ahead than you would have been before.
Yeah, I would echo that. I came from other brands also that were, resourced to build e-commerce solutions for global businesses. I come personally from a technical and engineering background, so many of my friends and colleagues in the industry were kind of almost a stigma attached to me working with Shopify. They couldn't believe that we were running this big global business, and since then I've been on a mission to convert everybody and convince them that it's not like what they've heard.
All right. Well, we're still getting questions about this particular topic, but I think they'll probably be addressed as we move along here. But kind of sticking with John and Colleen, it was mentioned that you've been on Shopify for 7 years. I'm assuming this rebuild took place not at the initial point, but further along on your time with Shopify. Anything else you can share about what led you to do the rebuild? What were some of the technology or business drivers that were there that haven't been mentioned so far?
Yeah, I can kick us off. I think overall, it just really gave us flexibility across the markets instead of having to do things multiple times, which was the position we were in with all of our Shopify admins. If we wanted to roll something to all markets, all countries, all brands, the work had to kind of be copy pasted, redone 30 plus times. So moving to a shared code base was really important to us. We also did a lot of cleanup. We had a lot of old messy code. We hadn't really done a code review since our initial migration. So being able to kind of improve site speed and take care of that was really key. Ben did mention the 260 plus apps across the sites, but we really did a huge consolidation on that. I don't know the exact number we got to off the top of my head, but I would say we cut that down by more than half. Basically looking across them and what they did, how the team was using them. There were a lot of apps across the admins doing the same thing. So it really gave us the opportunity to pick the best one and align. And it makes it a lot easier for us on the business side now to help each other because we've got the same tools in our toolbox to reference. And I think I saw some questions come in around, if you start to layer in all of these apps and things, does it really drive the costs up? There's so many options in the App Store that you can find some really great low-cost solutions. And if you are in a position like us where we're running multiple brands, most of them, instead of just kind of a direct plug and play, if you reach out to them, they will give you kind of a scalable pricing across all of your sites, which is really great. And then I think one of the other wins too with Content Stack as well is that we can now share content across countries. So like if Canada wants to mirror the US homepage, they can really easily copy it on over versus before. Again, that would need to be set up however many times for however many, versions wanted to use it. So yeah, they might have to update linking or something small, but it's so much easier. So I think those were two just kind of operational, really big wins that we got out of it.
Great. All right, I'm going to move into a question that came in from the audience. This is from Elalami Lafke. Apologize if I didn't pronounce that correct. At Decathlon, EVP of Omnicommerce. And one of the main limitations that this person had in mind is the lack of global support from the Shopify platform in the sense of multi-countries, multi-currency, multi-locals setup. Has that changed? And so I don't know, Paul, if you want to take that, or that seems also very appropriate for you, John, as the VP of International.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can go first, and then Paul can add on. I mean, when I joined, I think that was largely true. That comment, it was pretty restrictive. We actually have, individual sites in each of the markets that we do business in. It's not one site serving all markets, because back then there was really no concept of what is now Shopify Markets, which is the product they're bringing, to their clients to as they listen to all of the shortcomings for the platform for international. So I definitely think that's changing. We're not using markets yet. We are still running effectively 30 different backends around the world. This project has allowed us to have a single code base for the front end, though, which was our main objective. And we're sort of evaluating markets and whether that may be something we can move forward within a future phase to streamline the backend operations.
Paul, anything you wanted to add?
First, I want to say hi to Ilalami. We were on the Salesforce or Demandware Client Advisory Board together, I think, when he was at L'Oreal. So good to see you. Yeah, the call out is right, is that Shopify is still not all the way there on multi-brand, multi-region, really supporting a global business. However, that's the solution we built here with Content Stack for Steve Madden. And they are innovating so fast. Even just today in Editions, they announced support for 12 new countries on Shopify payments. And I talked about the new entity support that they were building out. So Shopify Markets, which is functionality that John talked about, used to just be cross-border shipping, white labeled. And it's come so far from that. And so it's almost to the point now where it is fully ready. But there's so many workarounds to support a global, multi-region, multi-brand business. And the real answer is there's only a couple things like that. We still need a true staging environment, but there's workarounds for that. Other than that, I mean, they've come so far on everything else that the answer is it's time to move, and soon it'll all be built out.
All right, great question. So I think this has been mentioned, and I think everyone seems to understand that it's not just the platform you're on, it's also the partners that you're working with and the integration partner in particular. So you can have, a great platform, but the wrong partner, or, a mediocre partner and a great platform, and you may not get the outcome that you would be hoping to get. I guess I'm interested to hear, John and Colleen, when you moved into this rebuild, how did you go about, deciding on finding a partner to help you with your Shopify rebuild? What was some of the criteria? What were some of the things that you were looking for? So I don't know, Colleen, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, you want to view these partners as an extension of your internal team. I think both sides need to feel that mutual ownership for the partnership to work. So in terms of, characteristics and things I look for, the same things I would when building my internal team. So I think a big one is just transparency and honesty. Someone you can have open, honest communication with is fundamental, and both sides should be upfront about expectations, transparent about any, project challenges, either upfront or as they come. I'd kind of group like active listening in with this as well. I think what Run D2C did a really great job with was coming in and spending time with the team and really taking that time to understand our business, our challenges, our future plans, not just the immediate project requirements, to make sure that they were building us a solution that was scalable and could grow with us. And you want someone that's going to challenge your way of thinking. If you're looking for an SI, then something isn't working within your status quo, or there's at least areas of opportunity. So you want different thought leadership in the conversation. And on the brand side, then you can't be totally closed off to change. And then I think the last big one is alignment of goals and motivation. So both sides have to have a shared understanding of the project's objectives and desired outcomes, because they feel like misaligned motivations tend to be the biggest cause of partnership failures. So definitely defining and aligning on what that success looks like is key.
Yeah, I think from my point, I agree with everything Colleen said. And I would just add that it was clear from the beginning when we met with the Run D2C team that they definitely understood the business of e-commerce. They understood the technology side, lots of good ideas and new thinking, as Colleen said, but we didn't have to spend a lot of time explaining the complexities of our international business, because they just inherently understood from the beginning, which was a really big help. It shortcut the process considerably.
All right, thank you. I want to address the next. This is a question that came up, I think, in a couple of questions around, if you're on, Salesforce, and we saw it in the day that you presented earlier, Paul, that we're seeing a migration towards Shopify right now. But I guess for Paul, Ben, Jeff, what are you seeing? Some of the reasons are that folks are switching from Salesforce into Shopify, or from anything else into Shopify right now. What are you finding are, some of the some common, reasons that are being cited?
I'll take a first shot, and then Ben, you feel free to jump in, or any of you guys. I think it goes back to that slide that I showed with the six reasons, but I would really highlight number one is the pace of product development and innovation. They are just innovating this product and building it so fast. They seem more committed than I've ever seen a software company, keep it up to date and make it better. Number two, I think, is cost. When it comes down to it, the cost to operate this thing, not just licensing, but to support it, the team, you need, the software licenses, you need the adjacent software is cheaper. It ends up that TCO number is real. And at this point in time, like, companies need bottom line wins or to funnel money into marketing to grow, because performance marketing has gotten more expensive. So those are the two big ones that stand out to me, but I could honestly go on and on. Ben, what other highlight would you give on that?
Yeah, I mean, probably the only other thing I'd call it out is just an appetite to simplify. I think the atrophy of long-standing, struggles with IT and slow-moving businesses as a result of, challenging platforms is, it's gone the way of the dodo. And I think that many brands are realizing that, the opportunity for the business to move faster, for them to, start to realize some gains in terms of operational efficiency, that they're real. And, Shopify is a great example of that. So the appetite to simplify is a big one as well.
That's a good call.
And, I was a little surprised at the polling question where there was such a diversity of opinion on whether headless is a must-have or not. Perhaps, it's about the definition of headless, which I think there might be a lot of them out there. But, do any of you have any comments, or maybe, like, what would you say to the people who say they disagree that it's a must-have, or what would you say to the people that agree that it's a must-have? Does anyone want to take that?
I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, it's a very polarizing topic, for sure. And I think headless has been a shiny object for a while, not dissimilar from like CDPs. And a number of years ago, it was something that I think was on everybody's consideration list. But I think also what's happened is there's the sort of understanding of what headless means well beyond the platform itself has grown. And so there's less of a sort of a feeling of urgency around this idea of headless when moving to a platform, with oftentimes what's the most important part is, unique control over the experience, to enable business teams to craft new experiences, to have a short time to market, to be able to, spin up new and unique features. When platforms, Shopify has a feature-rich collection of tools to manage content, which means that, headless isn't quite required from an editorial perspective. And then coupled with, a platform like Content Stack, which operates in sort of a headless function, but, allows you to remain within the construct, the platform construct. It reduces the amount of complexity. Some of the big things, in the Shopify ecosystem that are challenging in headless are apps. Not all apps are built to support headless. Most aren't. That means that there's going to be some inherent development, requirements, and it's a non-starter in many cases, for apps. So, think about like one of the key objectives of moving to Shopify, which is, again, like simplicity, enabling business teams. If you're to take away that one big piece, even, 60, 70, 80% of the opportunity to just bring on an app, it's a pretty substantial obstacle. We've seen quite a few sites have gone live, particularly using DXPs, but also with hydrogen and oxygen. And there's some success stories, but I think broadly there are also, it's challenging to find a really common theme and a common path, best practice to guide headless implementations. So we generally try and stay as close to the platform as possible.
I want to add a real practical answer. And I would not say that headless is not right for, large companies. I think there's use cases where You want ultimate flexibility, absolutely. But let's use this specific example. And Josh Crepon, who's the president of D2C, I'm lucky we didn't give him a mic because he would go off. He's not a fan of headless at all. It was a non-starter from the beginning. Steve Madden business is huge. It's I don't know if it's public or not, so I won't say it, but it's nearly $500 million online. And this whole thing, 5 brands, 30 plus sites across 25 countries. They have 2 full-time developers on staff, and they use us for support, but honestly, not that much. So practically, it's way cheaper, and you can put your money other places. I keep coming back to cost because I managed a P&L most of my career, but that's the bottom line of it. It is headless is way more resource intense.
Yeah, I'll answer. So, headless is just an architecture. It's not a philosophy. The idea is that a philosophy came about first that was enterprise organizations wanted a set of tools that allowed them to build once and deploy to many, right? To be a hub using APIs that supported like complex builds. And whether, I mean, we talk about apps, but this really is moving towards like an omni-channel perspective. The headless platforms have gotten better, right? They've added features that are a bit more marketer friendly. They've definitely come about. So where headless was a challenge for a lot of organizations in years past because of maybe some of the shortcomings of headless platforms, it really hit that point of inflection where now headless platforms are becoming DXPs. We have the composable DXP concept where we're adopting additional features and bringing these things together. So we're helping with the lower cost of ownership by not making it just pure tools that need to be built and cobbled together. We're now trying to be the hub and try to help facilitate. But at its core, it's still doing like what Steve Madden brought it to do, which is be a centralized location for a lot of collaboration to then deploy to multiple instances. And that facilitation on behalf of teams who can now bring this together, whether it's curbing a shortcoming or whether it's really solving a complex problem, has been a big value. So like headless as a concept is evolving. I think where headless platforms are today, and especially where Content Stack really shines, is solving that problem that was ultimately there, that was always there. And now we're a better mousetrap than we were before to doing it. So I think that inflection point is helping this conversation be more relevant today than, frankly, maybe it was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, so we wanted to jump into some questions for John, in particular around international, and then there was one specific one that came in around whether you have dedicated teams for each country. But maybe, John, you could talk about kind of before and after the rebuild, what your international capabilities, how they evolved, and just kind of, where you are right now with international, because I know it can take many different, flavors.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to answer this question, but I think, the issue we had previously to this rebuild was that the US site was the focus of all of the development, and there was like a trickle down to the local markets. But often, the apps we'd selected in the US to provide a particular function wouldn't work in other markets. But now we're able to basically develop one site and all the functionality go live around the world at the same time, with the ability to easily change out apps for each individual market. It might be that there's a returns vendor in, South Africa that's an equivalent of a Narvar in the US, for instance. And, to address the question from earlier, I see that as a really enabling function and not limiting. The fact that the app store is out there in each of these countries with local apps that our local teams can request that we partner with and develop is a real benefit for us. So I guess that answers the question in the chat. Yes, we do have local teams in each country. So we have an e-commerce director in each market, and they're feeding into our central roadmap process now with all of their requests.
All right. So we just have a couple of minutes left. There's been so many questions, I haven't been able to get to all of them. I know some of you, is there anything that any of you saw in the questions that you wanted to comment on before we begin to wrap up?
Someone asked about subscription, Scott.
Mhm.
I can ask and answer if you want. They asked if Shopify has a native subscription offering, as well as a broad collection of subscription vendors and marketplace apps. And yeah, the answer is yes. They've got a whole suite of products in the platform and then apps that support it. Some really great partners. There's a lot of subscription companies on Shopify. Happy to take offline whoever asked that question and give you more information and options.
All right. So if there's not any other comments, I'm going to move into the commerce next steps. Rob, if we could put this, my screen up again. Let me do the presenter view. So this is something we do at the conference, and something we're starting to do with all of our content is just have a couple of three like key things you want to think about that are related to the topic. So the commerce next steps here is that for Steve Madden, scaled and complicated e-commerce structure, Shopify works for them. The second is finding the right systems integrator to help you build out enterprise application for Shopify is very important. And then third, headless is not a must-have, even in enterprise. Although that one I think is still debatable, certainly based on the polling question that we had. But I want to thank again all of you for joining us today for very popular, high interest topic. Paul, Jeff, Ben, John, Colleen, really appreciate you taking time to help educate our community about this. You can again download the deck from the presentation, and certainly be able to reach out to any of the folks here if you have follow-up questions. So thank you again. We will be back with our next webinar on Wednesday, June 4th, talking about the fun topic of tariffs. But until then, thank you again. Have a great rest of your week.